Let's talk about creativity. I used to not think of myself as a very creative person. I thought that I didn't have much of an imagination since I'm not really into fantasy and I would always struggle with creative writing at school. When I decided to change career and go back to uni to study architecture, I was worried I didn't have enough creative juice or imagination to bring to my design ideas. And so today I want to talk about creativity, imagination, and inspiration. More specifically, how to learn how to be more creative, and also discuss some things that might hold you back from reaching your creative potential. I'll also talk a bit about the tools I use to find inspiration while I make this skirt. One of the places I go to for inspiration might not be what you think, but it's the iconic, more specifically my wish list. When I'm feeling like I want to buy something new, I save things to there, and most often they're things that fall into one of two categories. First, things that I can't be bothered to make because they look too complicated or they're not worth my time, and two, things that I can definitely make that I simply cannot justify spending money on. The things that fall into that second category really drive me to try things out and push me creatively. So one day when I was scrolling, I came across this skirt that I think would work really well with this fabric I've had for literally more than a decade. When I bought this fabric originally, I earmarked it for a skirt, and my brain simply won't let it go, and I can't see it as any other garment. I've been thinking about what kind of skirt to make for these 10 plus years, and the little contrast detail on this skirt is something that I can see working with this fabric. While I talk about creativity, I'll show you the steps of how I put together this skirt. Something I've learned over the years of studying and now practicing architecture is that creativity doesn't necessarily need to be groundbreaking or some huge thing. Creativity can simply be looking, learning, and applying ideas. The other big overlap between architecture and fashion is that there's no such thing as an original idea. Architects copy other architects all the time, and they call it precedent research. And there's also no copyright in fashion, so blatantly plagiarizing garments happens all the time. So in the past 5 years or so, I've gone from using the big brand patterns to make clothes that are kind of something you can buy off the shelf, to applying what I've learned from that process, to trying to copy garments I see online or in a shop or on some influencer. I consider the process of interpreting the features of a garment, either from photos or in a shop, into a sketch as a key element of creativity. Along the way, I often think about ways to reverse engineer the garment or develop creative ways to achieve the same or a better outcome. One thing in particular that I've been thinking a lot about for this project is how to stitch the bias edging to minimize the top stitching and make the hem and the contrast line appear as neat as I can. The mass-produced garment uses a pretty simple method, so I'm going to see if I can make a better one, but we'll see where I end up. Another thing that you will always hear around the place is that being creative is something that you can't just sit and wait to strike you. A few years ago, I would have thought that it was the opposite. But for those that say you can learn how to be creative, I have to admit that they are correct. When I was studying, I used to get so frustrated that I couldn't develop my architectural ideas, or I would have some excellent last-minute idea that I wish I thought of earlier, but it was often too late to implement into my design. Then a couple of years ago, I was either reading or watching something, I can't remember who or what architect or designer said this, or even their words exactly, but the gist was to learn to love the process of doing the hard stuff, of doing the working out, and then you'll start finding joy in the whole process and not only in the final finished result. With that in mind, I started setting myself a minimum number of hours I would work on my uni project, and I would sit and I would work and I would go through iteration after iteration. I would force myself to sit there and draw stuff or test stuff out, and I would psych myself up and pretend to be really happy to be sitting down to do some work that I did start loving the process. The other benefit of that was that I became less affected by the perceived mistakes I was making along the way because of the sheer volume of work that I was doing. I was less attached to getting it right, which allowed me to be more comfortable with experimentation. And honestly, I think that is the key to unlocking creativity. Leave any self-judgment on the shelf, at the door, in the toilet, on the bus, wherever you put it. Just put it away and allow yourself space to experiment, to take the scenic route to the solution, whatever it is that you're working on. The time you spend figuring out isn't wasted. Your brain will be learning and making new connections that you can apply later on. Rather than procrastinating because you're worried you won't be able to do something perfectly or get it right the first, second, or third time, experimenting and keeping a curious mind is a much better way to spend your time, in my opinion, and something that 5 years ago Steph would be absolutely amazed and stunned to hear. So finally, to share a little more about this skirt, I used some creative thinking to adjust the pattern pieces to suit the vision that I had. I also made some mistakes along the way, like the first time I cut out the pieces, I forgot to cut the front part into 2 sections, and I had to go back and make a pattern piece for that. I had actually already planned to make those 2 separate pattern pieces, but I was happily chatting away with my husband while I was cutting out, so I was a little bit on autopilot and I just forgot. I took that opportunity to practice a bit of pattern drafting, which is another creative skill I don't think I would have learnt more about had I not put my self-judgment on the shelf and actually just had a go. Over the last few years of having this channel, it has actually pushed me to make more things out of my comfort zone, and doing that has helped me build confidence. All the encouragement I get, even when I'm unsure about sharing a project, is really reassuring. Without this channel, I don't think I would have tried to make all kinds of things, and all of your comments really inspire me to keep making, which is a great segue into sharing some places I get inspiration. One of those is online shopping, as I mentioned earlier, as well as in-person shopping, especially if there's something that I see online and I want to investigate how the piece is put together in real life. There are all kinds of screenshots from Instagram and other things that I have saved in my Instagram that I always forget to look at, but maybe one day I'll get to those. And I also finally, after a long time, I got the hang of Pinterest after many years of trying my best to ignore it. I will share my Pinterest page, I think, below, and you can have a look at some of the things that I've saved in my sewing category that are things that inspire me and maybe things that I want to try making for myself one day. Mostly, I guess I want to say that if you clicked on this video hoping to become instantly creative, then I have to let you down gently and say that I can only really offer encouragement. If you want to be more creative, then you have to spend time just being creative. Hopefully you can see from the process of me making this skirt that creativity doesn't have to be major. Start with something small and approach with a curious and open mind. If something is difficult, then try and work through it, and accept that you might not figure it out on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 50th time around. There are countless things in my wardrobe that I've made, and I consider them mistakes or just things that I should not have made, and I've never worn because they didn't turn out right. But I'm still sharing these projects with you because I learn something each and every time from the process, and then once again from you all sharing your ideas and suggestions. And all of those skills carry forward into the things that I continue to make in the future. I don't love the term influencer. I like to think that I hopefully inspire a few people out there to try something that they haven't done before, or to stick at the project that's causing you grief. If you are doubting if you are creative, then all you need to do is create. Don't wait for creativity to come to you. Go fuck some shit up and then see if you can find a way to creatively unfuck it. See you at the next one. Bye.